Let's talk about one of the most fascinating figures in American history, John D. Rockefeller. Now, this is a man who was just a walking paradox. He was a deeply religious man who built one of the most ruthless empires the world has ever seen. A guy so powerful, so hated, that the US government literally tore his company to pieces, and yet somehow he became the world's very first billionaire.
And right here, this is the central mystery of his story. It's the question we're going to unpack. How does the Supreme Court breaking up your entire monopoly somehow make you even wealthier? It sounds impossible, right? Well, to get the answer, you really have to understand the man. And to understand John D. Rockefeller, you have to go all the way back to the beginning, to a childhood that was shaped by two people who were polar opposites, his devout mother and his truly infamous father.
I mean, you couldn't make this up. On one side, you have his mother, Eliza. She taught him about God, about honesty, about the value of good, hard work. And on the other side, you have his father, William, who was better known as Devil Bill. And he wasn't just a father, he was a traveling con artist, a snake oil salesman, and a bigamist who had a whole other secret family. His entire worldview was built on cruelty and lies.
I mean, listen to this. This is Devil Bill in his own words. He wasn't just a bad guy. He thought being cruel was a form of education. He truly believed that by cheating his own kids, by swindling them in little deals, he was preparing them for the real world. He wanted to make them sharp.
And the most famous story, the one that defined John's life, happened when his dad told him to jump from a high place, promising he'd catch him. But then Devil Bill just stepped back. He let his own son fall and hit the floor. And the lesson he gave him? Never trust anyone completely, not even me. That single brutal lesson would become the absolute foundation for everything Rockefeller would do in business.
So you give a kid that kind of twisted education. How does that actually play out in the real world? Well, it plays out when Rockefeller steps into the absolute chaos of the early oil industry and begins his systematic takeover of Cleveland, Ohio. And it all starts with this number, $72,500. See, at just 25 years old, Rockefeller was in business with a partner who was way more cautious. They couldn't agree on how to grow, so they decided to auction off their refinery between the two of them. When his partner bid $72,000, thinking he'd won, Rockefeller just calmly bid this number and took total control. He later said that was the day his whole career was decided.
Now that he was in charge, he put this incredible mindset to work. Something historians call the Ledger A mindset, after this little accounting book he kept as a teenager where he tracked every single penny. While other refiners were just dumping their waste sludge into the rivers, he saw it as lost profit. He turned that waste into valuable new products like paraffin wax. He didn't just buy barrels for his oil, he bought the forests to grow the trees to make his own barrels. The goal was simple: own every single step, cut out every single middleman, and drive his costs so low that nobody could compete.
But being the most efficient wasn't going to be enough for total domination. Nope. For that, he needed a secret weapon. He looked at the major railroads, saw they were killing each other in these brutal price wars, and he came to them with a plan, a secret, brilliant, and utterly ruthless plan called the South Improvement Company. Okay, so check this out. The SIC was a work of evil genius. It had three parts. First, the rebate. Standard Oil got huge discounts on shipping its oil. Second, a spy network. The railroads fed him daily, detailed reports on all of his competitors, who they were shipping to, how much, everything. But the third part, the drawback, this was the kill shot. For every single barrel one of his competitors shipped, the railroad would pay a fee directly to Rockefeller. I mean, think about that. He was literally being paid by his own competition as they tried to compete with him. It was an impossible situation. And armed with this unbeatable advantage, Rockefeller just unleashed what came to be known as the Cleveland Massacre. The speed was insane. In just one 48-hour period, he bought out 6 of his rivals. And within about 6 weeks, 22 of the 26 refineries in the city belonged to him. It was over before they even knew what hit them. Now, eventually the public found out about the SIC, and there was this huge uproar, so it got shut down. But by then, it didn't even matter. Rockefeller already owned the board. So he just switched to his next strategy, vertical integration. If any remaining rival refused to sell out to him, he'd just buy up the entire supply chain they needed to survive. The barrel makers, the chemical suppliers, you name it. And he'd just slowly and methodically starve them of supplies until they had no choice but to give up. So by the late 1800s, it's done. Rockefeller controls 90% of the oil in America. But here's the thing. When you become that powerful, you also become a very big target. The public started calling Standard Oil the Anaconda. this giant monster strangling the country. And the forces of a reckoning, they were starting to gather. And the anaconda's greatest enemy turned out to be this incredible journalist named Ida Tarbell. Now for her, this wasn't just a story, it was personal. Her own father was an independent oil producer who had been ruined by Rockefeller's tactics. So for 2 solid years, she dug and she dug, unearthing all the secret contracts, mapping out the spy networks, and proving to the world once and for all that this monopoly was real and exactly how it worked. But her biggest bombshell, the story that really blew everything up, wasn't about business. It was about family. Tarbell exposed the fact that the famous, pious, church-going John D. Rockefeller was the son of the wanted con man, Devil Bill. This news was a national scandal. It completely shattered Rockefeller's carefully built public image, and for the very first time in his life, he had lost control of the story.
Tarbell's work basically lit a fire under the whole country and gave politicians like President Teddy Roosevelt all the ammunition they needed to go after Standard Oil. And after years and years of court battles, the final verdict came down. On May 15, 1911, the U.S. Supreme Court declared Standard Oil was an illegal monopoly and ordered it to be destroyed, dismantled, broken into pieces.
So, the empire was shattered. The government had won. Everyone thought Rockefeller was finally defeated. But what happens next is the most incredible, stunning twist in this entire tale.
So how did losing everything make him richer? Well, it's all in the details. The government broke Standard Oil into 34 separate, independent companies. They called them the baby standards. But here's the crucial part they overlooked. They could break up the company, but they couldn't take away Rockefeller's stock. He still owned his massive share in every single one of those 34 new companies.
And here's the paradox. Once these companies, which would eventually become giants, like Exxon, Chevron, Mobil, were freed from the legal weight of the monopoly, they were free to compete, to innovate, and their stock values just went to the moon. And all Rockefeller had to do was sit back and watch his personal wealth absolutely explode. And within just a few years of his company being destroyed, John D. Rockefeller became the world's first confirmed billionaire. $1 billion. You have to put that in perspective. This was a time when the average American family made about $800 a year. The very government action designed to crush him had made him richer than any human being had ever been before.
So in his final decades, with more money than he could ever spend, Rockefeller started on his last great project, giving it all away. And he did it with the same incredible focus and efficiency that he used to build his empire. He founded world-class institutions like the University of Chicago. He created the Rockefeller Foundation, which funded the science that wiped out diseases like yellow fever. And at the very same time, he launched this massive PR campaign to change his image, famously handing out shiny new dimes to little kids wherever he went.
Which leaves us with the one big, fascinating question. Was all that charity, all that good work, was it a genuine act of guilt? Was he trying to atone for his sins? Or was it the final, most brilliant con from the son of Devil Bill, a man who understood better than anyone that in the end it doesn't matter what you did, because history is always written by the winners?